They had plenty of lying space. They were able to lie down with their split feed. They did 1.5 kgs per day for 44 days, and I didn't need to weigh them every 2 weeks. I could literally see the difference in them. And I would say one of the most important things is, especially for the fattening cattle, that they have plenty of lying space, that they can lie down and relax and digest what they're eating.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Proinnsias and on this week's episode, I'm joined by future beef farmer Proinnsias Creedon to get an insight into his beef system and how he maximises performance over the winter and into the finishing period. Proinnsias, you're very welcome. Can you give a background to your farm and your beef system?
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm farming here in the Musgrave Gaeltacht in Clondrohad, just outside Clondrohad village, between Clondrohad and Ballyvourna, in the disadvantaged area. I'm farming here with my wife Máire and my 3 sons, Ciarán, Aodhán and Diarmuid. We're situated roughly 720 feet above sea level and get roughly 55 to 60 inches of rain every year. We're mainly a dairy calf to beef system now, having switched to buying in dairy calves since the pandemic in 2020 and taking them onto factory level at roughly 24 to 26 months of age.
That's great, Proinnsias, and it's been a difficult few months. You're probably used to getting a lot of rain in that area, but how have you been managing grass on the farm?
The last 2 months, July and August, were very, very tough going. May and June, we were flying because we have an awful lot of heavy ground here. We were growing 80 to 100 kilograms of dry matter every day as we measure grass every week, and we were growing that. A lot of our ground, all it needs is the heat to drive the grass. But when the weather broke in the start of July, our growth decreased, and as each week passed, the weather got wetter and wetter, the ground got wetter and wetter, and we were actually we housed 29 store heifers the bank holiday weekend in August, and they spent 3 weeks inside just to try and give the ground a chance to recover. We had grass ahead, but our number of days was decreasing and our growth had decreased as well.
And ground conditions have been very difficult, particularly for finishing those kind of stock at grass. How are they performing at the moment?
Yeah, it was very, very difficult there in July and August. Through and through, they averaged roughly 0.85 kgs per day of a live weight gain. And we introduced silage to them about the second week of July, just to increase the dry matter intake for the heifers as well. And when we were picking some of them at the end of July, the first week of August, for finishing, we were looking at 450 kg of a carcass, a live weight, and looking to see had they flesh on them at that. And there were 1 or 2 heifers that were weighing 430, 435 kgs, and they were left back because they were plain heifers, and I won't draft them for feeding for another month or 6 weeks.
In relation to health planning this time of year, what are you doing on the farm?
At the moment, roughly in the next 2 weeks, all the calves will get an intranasal booster for both IBR and RSV PI3. They got that when they were small calves, and they'll get their booster in the next 2 weeks, so that they'll have it 3 to 4 weeks before housing at the end of October. And we will fecal sample all the calves, the store cattle, and dose accordingly for either worms or fluke, depending on what results come back in those fecal samples.
That's great, Proinnsias. And particularly at housing, what are the key tests that you carry out to try and maximise performance over the winter?
Well, I suppose the first one is we clip the tails when they're going in, and we shave their backs as well, just to give the cattle as much opportunity as they possibly can inside to keep maximising their performance. It's less of a lice issue as well, and it helps the cattle if they get warm in the house. It helps the cattle as well. And I suppose this year, the cattle will be going to a new slatted house which has been put up. This house was in the planning for the last 2 to 3 years. So between planning and putting the finance side of it together, it took 2 to 3 years to get that up and running. But the house is up. We have a 5-bay house put up with a 16.5-foot slat in that new house. So that will take all the strong cattle, all the store cattle, all the finishing cattle will go in there. And the existing house will accommodate the calves for the winter.
And particularly with regard to the selection process, how will you pin the cattle according to weight or age, particularly for the stores and the finishing stock? How will they be pinned?
They'll all be weighed going in, and they'll be penned according to weight. Regardless of, we mainly have Hereford and Angus heifers on the farm, and they will be penned according to weight going in.
And how will they be managed now from once they're housed up until they're finished?
In the next 2 weeks, we will be testing the silage to see what quality silage we have. And once those results come back, in conjunction with Aisling Malloy, my future beef advisor, and Anya Reardon, my Teagasc advisor, we'll work out a winter diet for the the calves, stroke weanlings, the store cattle, and the finishing cattle. And hopefully we can make most of the silage will come back at over 70% DMD.
Last year's cattle punchies, how did they perform?
They did well. Something we introduced last year, more by accident than anything else, was splitting the ration feed morning and evening. We just felt they got more value out of the ration by splitting it between morning and evening. And our carcasses last year, our average carcass last year was 289 kgs with an O+ grading. So hopefully this year the aim is to have a range of 280 to 300 kg carcass at 24 to 25 months of age. We're trying to pull back the age of slaughter. So last year our age of slaughter was 27 months on average. So this year we're hoping to pull back the age of slaughter to 24 to 25 months. And that is going to tie in with actually working in the new house. Aisling and Anya and myself, we've worked out the space per pen, and our Hereford Angus heifers would need a minimum of 2.2 square meters of lying space. So we're roughly going to put in 13 animals into each pen, so not overstock the pens, just to give the heifers a chance of doing their maximum performance in the house.
That's great, Punchies. And from your experience finishing stock, what are the key 2 or 3 things that you're doing on your farm that other farmers could implement that you find important?
When we pick the heifers for feeding, we weigh them. We weigh the heifers at a regular basis throughout the year. We weigh them and we monitor their weights and monitor their intakes of ration and silage. And what we do with the silage is up to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I just put out enough silage maybe today for 2 or 3 days in front of them and just bank it up in front of them. But I've found out that giving them fresh silage every day, every second day, they perform better. And the most important thing is that they have plenty access to clean water and lying space. Up to last winter, we just have the pens packed too tight, and we found out we weren't getting the thrive, we weren't getting the performance out of the heifers. And it was more by accident last year. We put 6 heifers into a shed, and they had plenty of lying space. They were able to lie down. You really have to enjoy them just lying down with their comfort. And with their split feed, they did 1.5 kgs per day for 44 days. And I didn't need to weigh them every 2 weeks. I could literally see the difference in them. And I would say one of the most important things is, especially for the fattening cattle, that they have plenty of lying space, that they can lie down and relax and digest what they're eating.
That's great, Punchies. Some great tips and advice there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Punchies for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.